Sitting next to me, listening to that conversation, is Chris Wild. Chris is a youth advisor, a care home consultant and author of Damaged. Why should he write that? Well, because he lived it and breathed it for many, many years, and he is sitting next to me. The bit about Ben-Hur will come to in a moment. You know, more blooming reports than you can shake a thing at. Cool. But what was your reaction to the general tone of Robert? Because he's not just a Tory MP. He is the chair of the Education Select Committee. Like you, you've worked with the Department for Education. He's got leverage. Were you optimistic?
Yeah, kind of. But you know, when I hear stuff like that, I speak to parliamentary figures every day, speak to civil servants. They all have that same tone. I was involved in the online safety bill 2 years ago, and they all had that same tone. Do you know what that bill is? It's still on a shelf in Parliament waiting to be passed. So when I hear people like Robert talking, I just think, it disheartens me a little bit because, you know, we're at that stage where everybody's great at giving a great speech and latching themselves onto things like this when it happens. When a child dies in care, everybody, politicians in particular, latch themselves onto this. Lessons need to be learnt, more needs to be done. But then it becomes fish and chip paper. Yeah. They're not personally connected to this like I am.
You see, I think that's why I made so much of it in my general introduction, is I didn't know how much it cost. Yeah. But that prediction from Josh McAllister that we could hit £15,000 million within 10 years, and Halfon corrected me, it may be sooner than 10 years, for taxpayers, therefore, even if their heart is in the right place and they do care, we go, poor little children, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, of course it is. And you've got to think about it. If I'm the only supermarket in a village, I can put a price on my food. And that's how the care sector has become, especially the private sector, where they can put a price on that. They can charge up to £5,000 a week per child. Imagine that, £5,000 a week.
The average is £4,000.
Exactly. Yeah. And then when you go into that environment, which I have done in the private sector, and you go to the young people's cupboard and you see no frills beans, and then you go to the staff cupboard and you see branded HP beans, that's where there is a dysfunction.
Yeah. So if Halfon picked up the phone or you went in to see Nadeem or whatever and said, OK, come on, Chris, give us the actual the hit list of what we need to do. The one thing I wasn't clear about when I wrote that introduction last night was whether we were talking about profiteering, as the FT suggests, or whether we're talking about people who simply are not up to the job, which is kind of what the BBC report suggests. What do you think?
Well, I was involved in a lot of the BBC investigation as well, and it's a bit of both profiteering and people who are not up for the job. There's a lot of directors who are profiteering from this, big corporate companies, who are making, what, I think last year, 300 million profit. This is where they're getting these contracts from central government. They're allowed to do this. Yeah, there has to be more power of intervention to stop that from happening.
And would you go along with what Halfon said as well about, OK, so Ofsted do tick boxes and the Care Quality Commission, but they're ticking boxes on places that it would seem, from independent authoritative research, do not earn a tick.
Exactly, and most of these places are hand-selected. At least Ofsted are very good at what they do, but they don't cover the care sector. The care sector is a completely different sector from education and everything else. It needs its own independent regulator to scrutinise and uncover what's going on behind closed doors.
Yeah. So the other thing that McAllister said, and it may be that we've got the makings here of cornerstone solutions, one is much clearer and legally enforceable standards, particularly for the 16, 17-year-olds, who in many respects, and you know this because you've been there and done it, are the most vulnerable because they're out and about in the free world shortly after that. So legally enforceable rules there, but maybe not Ofsted, maybe not the Care Quality Commission, but maybe a third organisation that is specifically and fully qualified to look after our young and vulnerable children.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's got to be an independent regulator. And I would say those people need to be lived experience, people who've lived there, seen it, breathed it and done it, people like myself. And I'm very interested to see in what Mr Will Quince comes up with. He's looking at forming independent groups to oversee these recommendations and make sure they're implemented. And that's one of the things we need to look at as a private regulator which is not affiliated to government or Ofsted.
Oh, fascinating. Is there an example of that out there?
Well, NIAS, people like that, they would be up for the job, maybe, you know, and looking at some of the major charity groups as well.
I only butt in to be clear for folk kind enough to be watching our conversation or listening on radio. So the government should set the rules because that's their job of Parliament, but then there should be an independent, freestanding agency that comes around unannounced, unexpected, to check that it's being done.
Yeah, and they should have power over local authorities as well. I think being involved in that care review for 15 months, looking at the solution, looking at the alternatives. That's the only way we can guarantee the safety of children, especially 16 to 18, who don't have any legal representation, who are going off and going into jail or becoming homeless. The facts are there. The data is there. Let's respond now.
Yeah. And again, that's the human side of it.
Yeah.
But I'm not wearing a liberal hat. I don't wear a liberal hat. But someone's got to pick up the tab for that. And there's only one person who picks up the tab for it, and it's the taxpayer.
Of course, yeah, it's the taxpayer. But look, prevention is cheaper than cure. Let me give you an idea here. It costs £250,000 a year to put a young person in jail. That's Cockenwood, Pentonville. It costs about £50,000 to make sure that young person has a loving, supported home to live in and prevent that cost in the future. That's what we've got to start thinking about. Prevention is cheaper than cure.
That's an extraordinary point to end on.
Yeah.
I'm going to get told off by the good people in my ear, but just one final point. This report, McAllister, was commissioned by Gavin Williamson, and you had a relationship with the Department for Education in those days. Do you see in Nadeem Zahawi, a guy, and Halfan, that this might be the team that could actually get it done this time?
Listen, I don't try to be politically correct here, or I'm on the fence here, but my answer is no. I don't think so. But we have the backing of the Labour government, and I'm hoping they can push it through.
Labour Party.
Labour Party.
Not government yet. May never be. Chris, thank you for sharing that, and for sharing your experiences, and for sitting quietly listening to what my friend Robert Halfan said. I hope that the camera and director can sort that out. This is a leaflet. It's chriswild.com. State of it and damaged. Spend time, take a look. Because if you think it's not my problem, those brilliant books will tell you, do you know what? It could be.